Hey, you. Yeah, you. You love Shadowrun, but you hate the rules, and so you're going to go on Reddit every single day and you're going to ask, hey, which edition should I play? I come from D&D 5e, and I really tried to port Cyberpunk into D&D because I watched the Netflix series and I played the game, and it was pretty sweet, but then I heard that magic can be in Cyberpunk too with Shadowrun, and then I tried to look at the books, but like everywhere I look online, they say that Shadowrun fucking sucks, but the game is cool, but the rules suck, so like tell me which edition, 5,000 posts a day about which edition should I play, what's the easiest, or are you the person that responds and goes, hey kid, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, no one likes Shadowrun. Shadowrun fucking sucks. We all love it, but we don't like to play it. But I'm on the Shadowrun subreddit because I'm here to tell you to don't even fucking try it. It's too fucking hard. Go port it from like Blades in the Dark or some fucking narrative system because it ain't worth it, pal. It ain't worth it. Is that you too? I'm pretty sure you fall into one of those camps because that covers 100% of Shadowrun fans. What I want to tell you is that you're all wrong. You're all wrong, all right? And I'm going to prove it. I would wait till the end of this video, but I'm not a successful YouTuber. I don't know how to do that shit. So I'm going to tell you right now, it's fucking 2nd edition. Open up the core rulebook. Now, I'm going to repeat that again. The core rulebook of 2nd edition. I'm coming off kind of like an asshole. And that was kind of just to be a little bit clickbaity. But I promise I'm not really an angry ginger like I look. Hey guys, this is Ben from Pink Fohawk. I don't know why I do this with my hands. It's kind of like I'm exploding onto the scene. It's very anticlimactic, but if you can use your minds, and I think if you play Shadowrun, I think you're pretty good at this, but use your mind and just imagine me sort of exploding onto the scene. I'm not going to do many of these opinion pieces. This is kind of rare for me. And I always look stupid when I'm debating people anyway, because I get too passionate about things and I look like I'm losing, even if I'm winning. So that's not something I see happening. But I did want to address one thing that I see a lot in the Shadowrun subreddit and on forums. 2nd edition gets kind of the shaft. People kind of gloss over it and consider it sort of like this lesser edition because old equals bad. And also there's this kind of misconception on 3rd edition being this sort of more refined version of the facet chapter of Shadowrun. And I'm here to tell you guys that it's not true. Now, before I get too far into it, I have to do the necessary disclaimer and say that every table is different. Everyone plays differently. Everyone enjoys Shadowrun a little bit differently. Some people are totally cool with the amount of crunch. Some people like the crunchier editions of Shadowrun and love to throw in all the alternate rules and all that stuff. This video is not for you because you're fine. You're totally fine. Like, what are you even listening to this for? You are fine with Shadowrun. You love it as is. This is for the people that are complaining constantly, and I was one of them. I'm not name calling here. I fucking totally was like you. Saying that Shadowrun is too hard. Why is it so hard? Is there an easier way to do this? Now, I'm recommending 2nd edition in this, but I will say this. A lot of people will tell you Anarchy, and I will agree with them on this basis alone. If you are familiar with 5th edition, or you own a lot of 5th edition books, your grandpa died and you got all these fucking 5th edition Shadowrun books because your grandpa was fucking awesome. Okay, you should play Anarchy because Anarchy is built off of 5th edition. It's got a lot of the sensibilities, and quite honestly, Anarchy is kind of a rule book on what not to use from 5th edition. So it kind of tells you easier streamlined rules for Shadowrun, but a lot of the time it kind of refers to 5th edition and it's kind of like, well, we're not going to cover that. You can look at fucking 5th edition for that. And so I think a lot of people that are really familiar with 5th edition will recommend Anarchy to new players thinking, just pick this fucking book up, man. It's perfect. But they don't realize how much knowledge is sort of expected. It's sort of like required to know 5th edition a bit to really get into Anarchy. Now, it's not that difficult. You can pick up 5th edition and then Anarchy and kind of figure it out. But I'm trying to tell you, it's not as simple as a lot of people make it sound. I came in and I was like, wait, what the fuck is it? It's referring to the 5th core rulebook for like half the shit in this book. So now I got to dig through that thing and learn how that works so I can now unlearn it in Anarchy or whatever. So that's my caveat, is that like, yes, Anarchy is great. If you've played 5th edition and you're very familiar, definitely check it out. There's even this 2050s Anarchy source book that kind of rolls the timeline back to the 2050s using 5th edition and Anarchy rules. Awesome. Otherwise, if you have not played any Shadowrun, I recommend 2nd edition. This boy right here, this big boy. This thing is fucking awesome. I was just like you. I was going through the Reddit forums going, how can I convert Shadowrun to a D20 system? Or has someone found a way to strip down Shadowrun and make it way more easy? And then you have people coming and telling you runners in the shadows. And then there's the sprawl the sprawl runners or something like that. There's a lot of them. Some people have fun with those, and awesome, more power to them. To me, all these other systems kind of felt like diet Shadowrun. And so I wanted to stay within a Shadowrun official system. And I was asking around for like which one was kind of the easiest, which you're seeing on Reddit all the time. I did that. I'm guilty. Someone super fucking smart told me, and I got to find out who it is, actually. I got to dig through my Reddit shit and find out who this guy is. I got to give him proper credit. Told me, pick up 2nd edition, man. And it was like this comment that got like no likes. It was down below all of my shit. Everyone else telling me this, that, grab this thing and grab these 4 books. And if you roll them all together, you get this kind of thing. And it's kind of like Shadowrun. It's pretty sweet. Grab Witcher and fucking mix that with Cyberpunk Red. And then grab the fucking like the vampires and whatever source book for Cyberpunk. And then you got Shadowrun. So basically this guy told me 2nd edition, and it stuck. Because when I looked at this fucking book, I saw the cover of the Genesis game. And I said, oh shit, that's pretty cool. And finally I just said, you know what? I'm working so hard to get out of doing work that if I just read this fucking book, I wonder how it would go. And I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't the easiest because I'm kind of an idiot. But even so, me being the idiot that I am, I still figured out 2nd edition much easier than when I cracked open a 3rd edition book or tried to learn Anarchy. And I'll tell you why, is that it is the leanest core rule book. I'm going to repeat that. The leanest core rule book for any edition of Shadowrun. And the reason is 2nd edition is sort of a bare bones rule system of Shadowrun. Matrix is a problem. And that is sort of, everyone understands that and agrees with that. However, everything else is pretty freaking easy to learn. It really is. And there are certain rulings for things that are more abstract, and it's sort of up to the GM and the player to sort of come up with a satisfactory ruling to fit the situation. That's how I personally like to play. And I feel like a lot of people these days play that way as well. Not that they didn't exist before, but I think more people are playing TTRPGs now, thanks to the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. But I think a lot more people are opening up their mind and playing sort of these more abstract games that don't have all this crunch in them. They're just a little more vague in their rulings for things. Now, here's the history lesson. They started making source books, right? And basically what started to happen, they started to make advanced rulings, more complicated, more deep rules that made these, that really built out and fleshed out and made these things more robust, these systems like Matrix and even combat, even physical combat. All of these sort of deeper things that aren't necessary to play Shadowrun. But they're there, and it's a lot of players loved it. They ate that shit up. They bought these source books. The source books really just added crunch to things, which you could kind of pick and choose and decide what you wanted to bring into your game. In the core rulebook, there's no rule for dual melee fighting. There's a rule for dual firearm. And someone like me at the table, that's not going to bother me that there's no melee rule for dual weapons. I'll just take the rule for firearms and I'll apply it to melee in a way that works for my game. I'll work it out with the player. But I think a lot of people wanted to know, well, what happens? I want to know. Social engagement tests, all these different things where they're all in source books that kind of extrapolated on the rules of the game and made them a little more in depth. Now, a lot of people that played Shadowrun 2nd edition and played it all the way through or started in 2nd edition, I will tell you, it was just as hard as other things, or sometimes even harder. I think those people are mistaken. I think they bought all the source books. They brought them all into their game. They would go to their tables. They'd have all the freaking source books there. And they'd be like, okay, well, I got a mage and the mage wants to create his own spells. So I'll bring Grimoire. I got a rigger. He wants to use drones. So I'll bring my Rigger 2 book. We got someone that's a decker. I'll bring my VR 2.0 book. Fields of Fire for more advanced sort of combat rulings. They had all these source books, and I'm sure that started to get cumbersome and annoying. What 3rd edition did, from the standpoint of crunch alone, what they did was they took all the source book material and they rolled it all into the core rulebook of 3rd edition. Fans at the time probably thought that was fucking awesome. They were like, this is great. I just have to bring this one book now. It's got the revamped Matrix rules from VR 2.0 in the book. It's got advanced rigor rules in the book. It's all here in the core rulebook. This is amazing. I don't have to tow around a ton of fucking source books. And so I think a lot of people consider 3rd to be the most streamlined edition because you don't have to have all these source books for these sort of advanced rules. What I think they get wrong from a crunch standpoint alone is that they didn't realize what was happening was now you just added crunch to the core game. That's the core game now. And from that point on, that's stuck with Shadowrun. 4th edition kept with that crunch, maybe even added a little bit in certain things. It came a lot more simulationist. 5th edition, my God, there's so many fucking tables on how to play the game. All those things stuck with Shadowrun. All those sort of advanced rulings. The systems themselves started to feel like separate games a little more, which is such a cool thing about Shadowrun. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I think 2nd edition, if you roll it back, 2nd edition, what it did really well was it gave you just what you needed to know to play the fucking game. And you can add in from source books to add more crunch in areas that you think needs it. If you have a rigger and you're sitting here going, there's not much here for me to do. Okay, buy rigger 2 and you can implement that in your game. It's much easier, I think, to add things to a system that's working that might need a little help in areas than to get this fucking tome with 3 separate whole games in it and try to like siphon out what information you need and what you don't want to use in your game. From that standpoint alone, if you are a newcomer to Shadowrun and you want a game that's you're a little intimidated by the crunch, check out 2nd edition. And once you learn 2nd edition, you know the concepts of Shadowrun. It's easier to now learn Shadowrun from there. So that's my rant on Shadowrun. 2nd edition is the leanest core rulebook. If you stick to core rules, it is the simplest to learn. My last thing I'll say here, a couple tips. You want to avoid matrix. You want to avoid rigging for now. Our 2nd edition podcast, we have no mages or deckers or riggers in our game. We're having a fucking blast. I can introduce those elements in through NPCs or enemies that they have to play. And yes, at some point we'll bring in some characters that hit those elements. But I don't see there's any problem with that. A lot of people get upset about that and go, why do I have to take this? This is broken if I have to take this thing out of my game to learn it. And the way I see it is like, it's different. It's different because Shadowrun is a classless system and it doesn't have levels. So D&D, you wouldn't start your first time playing D&D. You wouldn't start with a 10th level mage, right? You'd fucking start with a 1st level mage. Well, you don't have that in Shadowrun. And so you got to put the training wheels on just as you would with D&D. Maybe you don't allow multi-classing the first time you're trying to play it because you're a DM and you don't know what that means. How is that? Is that going to break the game? Is it going to fuck my game up? Is it going to make it hard for me to understand what abilities they can use and what abilities they can't? That's all acceptable. That's all stuff that we understand as players in D&D going, well, of course, you wouldn't allow multi-classing or allow them to start as a 5th level freaking player when they're just getting started. Of course not. Well, Shadowrun is the same way. Make deckers off limits, make riggers off limits the first time you're playing. Just get the combat and the feel of Shadowrun down. There's always time to bring those elements into your game. And by that point, you've got a solid foundation of how to play Shadowrun. So long story short, 2nd edition is king. It's not perfect at all. And no edition of Shadowrun is. But from the standpoint of someone that wants less crunch, I really do recommend trying to pick up 2nd edition for people that are a little bit more crunch averse, like me. Thank you for listening. I hope that helps. And, I'm totally cool with you disagreeing with me. If you do, please give me a respectful comment underneath and tell me how I'm wrong. I'm all about a healthy discourse for Shadowrun. I love this game. And if people are able to continue to respect each other in this space, there's room for every single opinion and every single way of playing. So totally cool. Tell me all about it down below. Even if you're not a 2nd edition fan, check out our podcast. It's a freaking ridiculous romp through 2nd edition. We play it fast and loose. It's 80s epic ridiculousness, and I think you'll dig it. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.